Coming up, the Panthers choke on a Melbourne-sized donut. Is it the end of Toulouse Olympique as the spectre of John Hopewate looms large? And the girls are back in town as the 2022 NRLW season gets underway. Yes, hello, and welcome back to the Sideline Chat podcast, the one-stop shop for rugby league. Along with Mark Hendry, I'm Connor Marcellus, and today it is your NRL Week 23 debrief and your NRL Week 1 debrief as we get to the business end of the season. But before we get into all of that, it is time to look at the team list for round 23 of the NRL. And what a doozy we have to start us off on Thursday Night Football, the second of the grand final rematch.
Yes, it very much is. So the away side being the Penrith Panthers, Dylan Edwards was a late scratching last week, but he is returning, so that means Charlie Staines goes to the bench and Robert Jennings 18th man. Liam Martin has been cleared to play despite picking up a slight ankle injury last time out, with Turuva keeping his spot in the win with Taylor May still another week away.
A couple of changes for the home side in the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Campbell Graham is back in the centres, which unfortunately impressive debutant Isaac Thompson back to the reserves, and Jackson Paulo to the wing. Daniel Saluka Fafita starts in the front row with still no Tom Burgess named as of yet. He remains sidelined, and Lachlan Ilias is also back in the halves, with Dean Hawkins also dropping back to the reserves.
What a good matchup this is going to be.
Oh, this will be one of the highlights for sure. Or especially with the way these two sides I'd spared last time out. Of course, the Panthers got donutted by the Melbourne Storm 16-0, which I didn't really see coming whatsoever. And then the Rabbitohs say, hold my beer, Melbourne. I'm going to do the same thing into the Eels. And they, sure enough, they did, 26 points to 0.
Yeah, the Parramatta, they were absolutely shit. That's all you can say, they were shit. They were not even in the contest whatsoever, and South were just way too strong for them.
Defensively, both Melbourne and South Sydney did the same game plan. Harassed as the Panthers and frustrated the Eels with their attack, because we've got to remember, Penrith were throwing everything at Melbourne, but they just couldn't break through.
No, they certainly couldn't. And like I said last week, this is going to be a real test to see how Penrith go without Cleary and Luai against the top side. And, well, look what happened there. Yes, I know Cleary and Luai are going to be back for the finals, but for a run home, this is going to be a real test for him.
And it was the same story with the Eels. How many opportunities do you think they had that they got denied by the Rabbitohs' scramble?
Very much so. Even by the bunker as well, with Marcus Sivo's try that got disallowed because he knocked on in the in-goal area.
It was touch and go in both of those instances. I think Jason Demetriou can take a lot of confidence out of that defensive display heading into this one. And I think he's got a fair chance in this one. Standout player is especially with the Rabbitohs, Latrell Mitchell. 211 running meters, 1 try assist, 9 tackle breaks, 2 offloads, and 3 from 5 goals converted. Whilst for Melbourne, I was actually impressed by this tactic. Nelson Asofa Solomona, he was actually playing out on an edge for the majority of this game. 130 running meters, 10 tackle breaks, 17 hit-ups, 1 offload to his name.
Yeah, he had an interesting move to have him out on the edge, but it paid off big time.
It worked. I got to say, Craig Bellamy is amongst the best coaches in our league. That tactical move is another highlighting, again, why he is the best of the best.
Whether or not they might change that, like, go and run into the finals, we'll have to wait and see.
Well,
even if he's not named,
anything can happen.
Even if he's not named on the starting edge, it could always get moved throughout the match.
Now, back to this game. This is going to be a big result for both clubs. Penrith, they're still probably going to end up being the minor premiers, but it's going to be touch and go at this point, especially with North Queensland playing some good footy themselves.
Yeah, it's just really to see how Penrith go in the back end of the year. It's really touch and go, but I don't think Penrith are going to lose the minor premiership.
Even if it does come out to a top 2 shootout in 2 weeks?
Have to wait and see. It's still hardcore, but at this very point in time, I don't see Penrith losing it. A couple of weeks ago, when they heard the news of Cleary and Luai out, then I thought, oh, yeah, they're gone. But then last week they proved that it's still got it. But then, well, the week before last, they proof that they were still could win, but then that was against a low, not a harder opponent, but then against Melbourne they were bad. So have to wait and see what happens.
It has to be paramount that the Panthers have to find a way to break down the Rabbitohs defensively. Of course, we know that's probably going to happen because they can probably find a chink somewhere in South Sydney's armour. But what I'm more worried about is when the Rabbitohs go on the offensive. Especially after what Latrell Mitchell did to the Eels, I should say. I'm going to give the edge here to South Sydney. I think they win this 7-12, and they really make this top 4 competition spicy.
Well, I'm going to go South Sydney as well, but I'm going to say they're going to win 13 plus by 18 points. Well, we know what Penrith did against Melbourne, and I think they could do the same against South Sydney, especially if how the form that Latrell Mitchell's playing, Alex Johnson with his try scoring at the rate he's going. It's going to be hard for Penrith to win this one.
Yeah, I just think with the way Mitchell's carrying the Bunnies, it's the same way I think many argue. I don't want to use the Tom Trbojevic in 2021 because he literally did it for much longer. But it's the timing's there for South Sydney. I think all the concerns about Adam Reynolds earlier in the year, I think they've well and truly blown that out of the water at this point. Yeah. I think South Sydney, if they continue this way, and if they get another scalp against the Cowboys, look out. I honestly got to say, look out.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to the first of the Friday night games, it's North Queensland Cowboys up against the New Zealand Warriors, and Stacey Jones has the luxury of naming the same 17 that downed the Bulldogs only the week prior.
That's good to see. As for the home side, Caulfield is back, which is a big in for him, but that means Tubby Whitewater goes to the bench and Jermaine Tanua-Brown goes to 18th man. Jordan McLean has been promoted to the starting side in place of Colin Hess, who reverts back to the bench.
Now, of course, both these sides have contrasting performances. The Warriors somehow coming out and downing the Canterbury Bulldogs 42 points to 18, whilst the Roosters put North Queensland to the sword 32-18.
Look, start off with the away side. Warriors, they did well to win that one, but in saying that, the Bulldogs, once they got to 18 points, they just collapsed. Absolutely collapsed.
I honestly could not believe what I was witnessing. I mean, at 18-all, the Fox had just scored, and I felt like, oh yeah, we're going to come back here, and we're going to show the Warriors what for. Little do I know, the final 20 minutes, 4 tries scored in that period. I think Ed Cussy adds a double. And then Adam Fanua-Blake, oh my God, the worst way to concede a try. Bat back, front row scoops it up, and he scores underneath the sticks. That is honestly the worst way to concede a try.
It is, but it happened. I think Ed Cussy, he got a hat-trick in the match, but I think...
I'm pretty sure it was just a double this time.
I thought it was a hat-trick. Anyway. But yeah, he had a cracker game out there. Like the whole Warriors, even Sean Johnson wind back the clock a little bit.
Well, I reckon Sean Johnson put in an absolute first-class performance, winding the clock up back to his younger days.
Well, especially when he scored that try. That was out of...
yeah, it was only a double to Ed Cussy. You're probably thinking Eli Katoa in there somewhere. Similar initials.
Possibly, yeah, probably.
Very similar initials, I got to say. But Reece Walsh, for me, I think, he was the difference. The real difference, I think. 144 running meters, 2 try assists, 8 tackle breaks, and 7 from 7 goals converted. Now, meantime, the Cowboys, wow, they just got dominated through the middle hard. And I remember last week, I said the bench rotation of North Queensland turned the tide against the Bulldogs. But the Roosters, they didn't even get off the ground. Their starting force didn't get off the ground against this dominant Roosters onslaught.
No. Look, the Cowboys, in what was a very emotional match.
Yes, of course, as we touched on last week. Literally live during the recording we were doing. The news that broke that the passing of former Cowboys premiership winning coach Paul Green. Of course, he played for both the Roosters and the Cowboys, as well as coaching both clubs as well. That's just...
Yeah, so it's a very big occasion for both these sides, but I think it would have been more so the Cowboys. But
It was for the Cowboys. It was on their mind.
They just couldn't get there in the end. I think they were slightly off, but then their record in Sydney isn't good either when you look at it.
It's only against teams called St George. Their record isn't as good as you say it is.
Well, there you go.
But the dominance, it was the middle of the field, especially Victor Radley, and he was the Roosters standout player for me. 123 running meters, 2 try assists, 1 tackle break, and 2 line break assists. But the tries to Suali'i and Matt Lodge early on, that set the platform up for the Roosters in a way I don't think the Cowboys could handle.
Well, no, like Sawali and that. Well, basically every single, like the 2 Roosters winners and 2 Cowboys winners scored a try, which how often do you see that happen?
Both the Roosters dummy halves scored. I mean, both the dummy halves scored.
Yes, that too. And the Roosters forward pack, holy smoke, I think nearly every single one of them scored. Nearly.
Lodge, Waria Hargraves, Ace, just the front rowers.
Yeah.
But a solid effort from the Roosters middles that turned... Because remember a couple of years ago, the Roosters were criticised for not having enough of a forward pack to contend with the likes of the Cowboys or the Broncos or the Storm.
Well, what do we just see now?
Exactly the point. The Roosters, they've got a purple patch on them at the moment. I think this race is far from over. But getting back to this game, Warriors coming up to Townsville. Now, we know there's going to be high emotion because this will be the first home game since the passing of Paul Green.
Yeah, and there'll be definitely a big tribute then for him there. Cowboys will surely get this one over him.
But could it be a repeat performance of what we saw down at the cricket ground? Because we saw all the emotion in that game and the Roosters just handled it better. Are we certain the Cowboys would learn the mistake of the week prior? That's what I want to know.
Well, the Cowboys will come up against a side like the Roosters last week, and then which is a top side, don't get me wrong. But then the Warriors, who aren't a top side and are way inconsistent, it should be a Cowboys victory because of how inconsistent the Warriors can be. But you never know.
It's a wait-and-see prospect, but the Cowboys should win this game, and for my liking. I think return of Kyle Felt is a big in, and they can utilise the hammer any which way they can. And whether they stick him on the wing, put him in the centres, or even just let him loose in the middle of the field, I think that'd be interesting to see how he goes. Whether he's big enough to do so, but Cowboys for me, 7-12.
I'm going to say Cowboys win this one 13 plus by 22 points. I think that they have got the better side than what the Warriors have. And especially being at home, they play really well at home, the Cowboys.
I think their home record is something very impressive. I think they've only lost twice up there.
Yeah, it's
first up to the Dogs in round 1, and then I think to the Sharks a couple of weeks back.
I believe so.
Actually, it's just a quick word of looking at before moving on. Home record 7-3, so there's a third loss in there somewhere. Oh, the Roosters as well. The Roosters beat them.
Well, there you go.
Beat them at home. So 3 losses, 7 wins at home. Yeah, but still very...
a bloody impressive record, though.
Now, the other main Friday night game, the Brisbane Broncos up against the Melbourne Storm. Bring out your dead already.
Yeah, so for some big in with Jerome Hughes is back, which is going to even help, help Melbourne even more so. I can't English today. And Felice Kafusi is still on personal leave, so Jan Tonomapea is still in the centres, and Marion Sebo dropping out due to hamstring.
No relative changes for the Broncos side that down the Newcastle Knights 28 points to 10, though Kobe Hetherington has been lifted to the start at lock and Ryan James has been pushed back to the bench. Now let's talk about the Brisbane Broncos. 28 points to 10. They were in cruise control for the entire first half against the Newcastle Knights.
Yeah, they were. I mean, when I was back to 18-10 at one stage, I thought, maybe, but no. I never knew Newcastle. They just got it close and then they just put the foot down, really. Adam Reynolds was like, no, we can't do this. Just let's keep going. And that's what's going to happen.
First half performance, the first half particular, when they went 3 tries to nothing, that was when the Broncos were at their best. I mean, you had the combination they're developing between Tamare Martin and Ezra Mann, though that's going to be temporary, the blueprint's going to be there, because then you put Reece Walsh in there next year for Brisbane. And then Broncos fans, I think, and you look at this turnaround that they've had, and I thought the Broncos would improve this year, but not as much as you'd expect. But top 6, chance of, however slight it is, a top 4 finish, depending on results.
Well, everyone thought that Brisbane were going to be the top 4, probably a few weeks ago, saying, I locked in top 4 spot, but then they slipped down a little bit.
Post-Origin always hurts the Broncos. I don't think there's any season where the Broncos haven't dipped after Origin 3.
Well, not that I can remember anyway. But yeah, like you said, the turnaround from where they were a couple of years ago, it's been impressive. Adam Reynolds has been a big player in that as well.
He is the winner out of this, Adam Reynolds, because South Sydney wouldn't give him 3 years. Brisbane did.
And look at what he's done.
It's a remarkable turnaround that they've finally got a halfback that can handle the pressure of being the Brisbane Broncos' main halfback. Like, I know I said halfback a couple of times in there. But the Knights' defence just fell off, especially when they got back into the grind. A try or 2 down. They could have turned the game on its head right here.
But no.
But it just gave, with all the headlines they've been stuck in this week, it's not good for them. But Selwyn Cobbo, Jesus Christ. If he is not the first choice winger on the right-hand edge for Australia come the Rugby League World Cup, I'll convert to Queenslandism.
Well, be prepared to get suspended next week. Nah.
3 tries, 196 running meters, 10 tackle breaks, and 3 line breaks. He's going to be Dally M Rookie of the Year, no questions about it.
Surely.
Well, actually, Jeremiah Nanai is probably... Between Cobbo and Nanai, I would have to say.
You could have joint.
Yeah.
It's been done. Well,
Dally M's been...
Dally M's been joint before.
A couple of times.
Yes.
So that can happen. But the Knights... We'll talk more about it, but this is a game the Broncos don't like playing whatsoever, because they don't like playing Melbourne at home.
No, which is surprisingly.
But then again, the Broncos are rarely beaten the Storm. It is a statistical fact that Melbourne have a positive win percentage against the Queensland powerhouse.
Well, yeah, but would Adam Reynolds be a different? Not just him, but I know Melbourne have got Jerome Hughes back, so it would definitely help them. But over the last few years, that, like you said, they haven't had that set halfback that can handle big pressure moments. Adam Reynolds can. And his form and his combination with Ezra Mann, but then Tamari Martin and Selwyn Cobbo's flying form, they could niggle Melbourne a little bit.
I don't think they can. I just feel like every time we come up to a Broncos Storm game, I'm thinking, oh yeah, don't fall into the trap of tipping the Broncos, because you know exactly what's going to happen. Melbourne are going to rock up, and they're probably going to put 40 on the Broncos, and then they slide off even further, off an edge. Or they bounce back big the following week. But always against Melbourne, they have not had any luck.
But could that change?
No, I don't think it will. Storm win this 13+.
I'm going to fall into that Brisbane trap.
You're going to fall into the trap?
I'm going to fall into the trap and say Brisbane.
He's going to fall into the trap. I guarantee you, come Friday night, 2 days from now, because we record these things on a Wednesday when we can, Melbourne will smash Brisbane till no end.
Nah, I say Brisbane by 6. It's going to be a close one, I reckon.
It's your fury.
I reckon it's going to be
now,
a close one.
moving on, it's the Parramatta Eels up against the Canterbury Bulldogs at CommBank Stadium in Parramatta. The Dogs have had some big inclusions in the reserves. Tavita Pangai Jr. and Luke Thompson have been included into the side. Of course, Thompson finally fit enough after suffering what seemed like a couple of months' worth of concussion. Pangai Jr. back from the birth of his, was it his first or his second child?
Not quite sure, to be quite
Well,
honest.
the birth of his child, regardless. Matt Burton free to play after accepting the fine for the shoulder charge in the loss to the Warriors, and Harrison Edwards lifted to start in the second row, though expect that to change before kickoff.
For the home side, Mitch Moses is back, so that's a massive inclusion for them. So Jake Arthur goes to the reserves. Baylor Somerson is listed near the reserves as he is nearing a return. And otherwise, unchanged lineup.
Well, both of these sides didn't fare well, and they had come off some strong performances, I think, the week prior. Well, the Dogs, of course, going down competitively to the Cowboys, and the Eels really rallying back after going down to Manly before that defensive shutout at the hands of the Rabbitohs.
Yes, the Parramatta will definitely be looking to turn that around. If they want to play finals footy, they don't need another performance like that.
Well, completing at 75% from 46% under the possession, so the Rabbitohs really pushing it hard there. And then, of course, discipline, you really have to factor in. 23 missed tackles to South's 24, 11 errors to their 13 errors to their 11, conceded 5 penalties, and 3 6 again calls.
It's not good enough. If you want to play finals, you can't do that stuff.
Mind you, they also did have to deal with the HIA as well. Also, they did have that disjointedment to their style of play, so to speak. Not style, but defensive line was sort of thrown a bit out of whack.
Yeah. But every team can have an HIA issue and their defence is out of whack. So that's still got to be no excuse for him, though.
But Mitchell Moses is the big in right here.
Bloody oath he is.
I was thinking before we sat down to do this, the Bulldogs had a chance, especially if Pangai Jr. and Thompson are included in the hour before kickoff. That was sort of my understanding of it. But looking at it now, Moses back, and probably at the right time for the Eels. I mean, sitting 7th, needing their stars to influence the result of right here. I think.
Well, it's your two teams, so you'll split.
Well, I win regardless. That's the thing. When you support the Bulldogs as a first choice and then the Eels as a second, you win either way.
Yeah, but who do you back more than the other, though?
Oh, that's
the question.
That's the thing. That's always the problem. And you in the Big Bash, you know this only too well. Oh, but let's not get into that right here. This is a rugby league podcast for all. This game is going to be competitive. The two best teams of the 1980s right here looking to put on a show.
Well, it's not.
But I think Moses coming back, his hand's probably healed up well enough so he can handle the ball.
Pun intended.
Yeah, well, no, I was being serious in that.
I know.
And I keep saying this. If the Eels just run hard, because they were too sideways against the Bunnies, they were trying to throw the ball around, try and get round them. The Eels play best, especially when it comes to Melbourne and Penrith. You go hard through the middle, and then you play off the back of Campbell, Gillard, Paolo, Madison. That's how the Eels play at their best. I don't know why they continuously try and throw the ball around, trying to get round oppositions when they're at their best going through them. I think the Eels win this 1-6.
Oh, I'm going to say the Eels will win this one by 12. It's going to be a competitive match, but I think Parramatta will just have the upper edge over the Bulldogs. I would like to see the Dogs win, but I don't think they can quite get there.
Now, of course, the NRLW will be playing in the game leading up to the Eels and the Bulldogs, hosting the Roosters for the first game of NRLW 2022 B at Combank Stadium, 1 o'clock kickoff.
Yeah, another season of NRLW, and this one, not only this game, but this season should be hopefully closer than what we had last season. Like, the women's game is growing massively. But to the team news, we're going to go to full team list for the Roosters. At fullback, we've got Sam Bremner. Winners been Liani Tufuga and Jamie Freshard. With the centres being Jess Surges and Isabel Kelly. What a combination that is in the centres.
It's a good combination.
The halves parent was Zahara Tamara and Ray C. McGregor. That is unchanged. At lock, we've got Keely Joseph with the second rows making up of Maya Hill, Shania Power, Olivia Koenig, with the front row being made up of Sarah Tokatuki, Destiny Brill, and Maya Hill Moana, with the bench being Jocelyn?
I probably think Josie would probably be the best way to describe that.
Thank you. Jocelyn, Kelleher, Shorten, Burton, Caloso,
Sepani.
thank you, Hopaway, and Otisa Poole.
And they are coached by the Premiership winner John Strange. That was for the Premiers. Now, moving on to the home side of the Parramatta Eels. Gail Broughton starts at fullback. The wingers are Tess Staines and Rakia Horn. In the centres, the marquee East centre Tiana Penitani and Abby Church. The convert of Rugby Sevens and AFLW, Brooke Morgan Walker, will start at 5'8", with the new halfback Lasana Lutu after Matty Studden was not re-signed by Parramatta. Koka Athens Aima Tafu Alpha at lock forward with Christian Pio and Vanessa Foliaki in the back row. Up front, and Philomena Hanisi, Ellie Malangi and Ellie Johnston are the front and row pairing. And off the bench, Kennedy Sheridan, Sherrington, Brooke Anderson, and Nevada George and Rima Butler. And they are coached by Dean Widders.
That is surprised that Matty Studden did not get re-signed from Parramatta.
And of course, the loss of Bovetti Welsh to an ACL injury did not help their cause either. It would seem Matty Studden was not re-signed. And
yeah, she was without a club, which is very unusual because she's a key player. Unless she's taken this season off to get prepared for one of the new clubs coming in for 2023.
Well, there's 4 clubs up for grabs. Of course, as we discussed previously, Canberra, Cronulla, North Queensland and West Tigers are all going to be included in the 2023 NRLWC.
I think that the West Tigers had her in the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership.
Yeah, so there could be some questions.
So maybe, I don't know.
About that. But the Premiers, they have not been messing around right here. Some of the key signings they had during the off-season, Destiny Brill from the Gold Coast Titans, that she was probably amongst one of their emerging talents the Titans had. Jamie Azard, centre from Newcastle, Sam Brent, and back in the side after spending the last couple of years out to because she was pregnant, of course. But yes, that's sort of the way things have unfolded. Olivia Higgins and Hannah Southwell, sort of the key forwards in their premiership win over St George Illawarra, joining the Newcastle Knights.
Yeah, so a bit of power gone there from the Roosters, but who knows if they can bounce back and do it or not. But with the centre pairings of Surges and Kelly, that
is the best centre pairing in the women's game, and I know it's still in its infancy, as many people have sort of seen in it, but let's just observe and then critique. I think that's sort of the best way to look at it here. Now, no Bovetti Welsh, no Matty Studden, so there's a readjustment and that's got to be made here. Crosscode convert in Morgan Walker. That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, well, let's see how she goes. I think she'll be able to do it. There's a lot of kicking involved in AFL. There's a little bit in NRL, but that will help her a lot. Her kicking game hopefully be strong.
The spine of the Eels will probably need a couple of weeks to gel, and it's only 5 rounds, so they've got to hit the ground running here, or it's going to be a long season for the Eels. I'm favouring the Roosters here as the Premier's first cab off the rank. I give them 7-12.
I'm going to say the Roosters win this one. I'm going to say by 6 points. They're the reigning premiers, and the Eagles might get a good read.
And Gail Broughton, and also just mentioning former New Zealand STEM star. So, a couple of cross-code jumping right here. Now, moving on, jumping back into the NRL fixtures. We're only covering in club bit by bit who do have an NRLW side attached. That's the second Saturday night game in the men's side, Manly against Cronulla.
For the Sharkies, Toby Rudolph is out for a month with a torn medial, so that does not help them for a run home. But Braden Hammond-Welly comes into the starting side, and Shafafida going to the bench after missing last week. Talakai is still silent, but Connor Tracy and Matt Moylan are back. So Braden Trindle and Matt Ikabalu and Jesse Colwell.
I think Cole Cohen and
Cole Cohen.
Braden Trindle.
Yeah, I said that. Braden Trindle, Matt Ikabalu.
There's been
They drop out.
Well, there's been devastation for the home side. Jason Saab doing his knee in the 44-24 loss to the Titans. So Tolu Kola shifts out to the wing with Morgan Harper returning into the centres. Jake Trebojevic now ruled out for the rest of the year after injuring his hand. So Dylan Walker shifts to lock forward and Ethan Bullimore joins the bench. Of course, the Sharks, a strong showing up at Scully Park in Tamworth of down the West Tigers 36-12. Whilst Manly surprisingly lost to the Titans 44-24, as I just said.
Upset of the year. Whoa, sorry, I shouldn't say.
There has been a list. There's
been a few upsets
of the biggest boilovers of the year. We should actually do a top 10 or 5
well,
list.
I'm going to say the first one's come up to mind. Tigers beating the Eels. Tigers beating the Rabbitohs. Tigers beating the Broncos. Tigers beating the Cowboys. Even though technically, officially, it wasn't.
That one doesn't count.
Unofficially, but still.
You know what? Let's just do it. We'll do a graphic up and we'll list off all the biggest boilovers
And now Titans beat Manly.
We'll rank them at the end of the year, provided we're still all here for this.
Yeah, but what a game! Like, where's this been all year for Gold Coast? Like, seriously.
I don't know. I seriously don't know.
But it helps them trying to avoid a wooden spoon, though.
Well, yeah. Now
could this be a crucial win for them to avoid the spoon? Only time will tell.
It's a question, nevertheless. But my God, some of the plays from Manly were just soft, especially defensively.
Yeah, their finals are very, very slim.
I think they're gone. They are gone.
Losing Saab and Jake Dvorovich for the rest of the year, they're gone. They're absolutely gone.
I'll tell you what, it's the two back rows from the Titans that were standouts in this game. David Fafita, first off. 1 try, 167 running meters, 8 tackle breaks, 5 offloads, and 1 steamrolled Josh Schuster.
Yeah.
That statistic I just admitted up on the spot.
But that's where he's been lacking all year. That's what they needed from him all year long. Not just one game, all year.
2021. He needs to get back to that standard he set down in 2021 when he had that unbelievable year. But I tell you what, the unsung hero of the Titans, Beau Fermor, 2 tries, 154 running meters, 2 tackle breaks, and a single offload.
He also had an absolute cracker of a game. He's been one of...
His second try, that was some fast feet from him.
It certainly was. He's like... I think he's an underrated player. And he's just like a quiet achiever. He goes out, does his job. He has good games week in, week out, but some are better than others. Like this one was one of his better games than others. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but...
It's just unfortunate he hasn't been picked for Queensland yet, because I felt like when they were having that injury crisis, I honestly thought Fermor should have been picked. Or even beforehand, he should have been picked.
I have to agree with you there, but obviously, well... Maybe next year, depending on how if his form continues on into next year, then he might be there.
Now the Sharks, on the other hand, they did it easy against West Tigers. I mean, defensively they were strong, only conceding 2 tries all up, whilst putting 6 on themselves. But it was just you saw half of the tries, where you had front rows crashing over of that brilliant play from Nico Hines to set up Cade Dykes for the corner. That was a well-weighted kick. Yeah. And the Sharks, remember, Paul Green, getting back onto him as well, he started his career out at the Sharks as the halfback. Rothman's medal in 1994 in his first year. He helped the Sharks to the Super League Grand Final 3 years later. Most of his best memories as a player, it's with Cronulla.
Yep. Yeah, and they come out and did that one. He would have been very happy with that performance there, Paul
And
Green.
Speaking of halfbacks, I had to go with Nico Hines for this one. 223 running meters, 1 try assist, 2 tackle breaks, 1 offload, and 6 from 7 goals converted.
Yeah, he had an absolute cracker game. I was just about to say, everyone thinks that Adam Reynolds is by the season. Nico Hines is a bloody
There is a
close
lot
second.
of contention for who is the best player of the year.
I have to say Adam Reynolds or Nico Hines for the Sharks. Adam Reynolds for Brisbane or Nico Hines for the
Townsend
Sharks.
for the Cowboys, you've got
That
to keep
too.
that one in the equation.
That too, yes.
Agent,
been a
because
few-
there is a lot of questions of
But
who could
Nico
be the
Hines
best of the best.
Has gone from the Melbourne system to the Sharks and has absolutely done wonders for that club and under new coach Craig Fitzgibbon as well.
Yeah, that is absolutely the case right there. But
That-
getting back to this one, Jake Trbojevic for me is a big loss.
Oh yes,
It is a big loss. Now that they've lost two of them, and
one left.
all the dynamics will still be the same, but the execution I just think won't, because they relied on Jake playing 80 minutes in the middle of the field most weekends. And he got through his tackles big time. This is why he got picked for the Blues after getting controversially overlooked for game one. I don't think they're going to have that same dynamic in the middle of the field, and I think the Sharks will take advantage of that.
Hell yeah,
Moylan's back, so that means, barring Dykes as a fullback, the Sharks have got that first choice Haas pair in set up, and Moylan's had a pretty reasonable year.
Oh, and Connor Tracy as well. He's back out on the winning.
Centres.
Centres, sorry. And we know what he is quite capable of. There's big loss for the Sharks is Toby Rudolph. That's going to...
But you're looking
got
at this
Brayden
pack here the
Hamlin-Uele
Sharks
too.
have got assembled. Hamlin-Uele, Hunt, Nakora, Graham for Nukin, Brayley, dummy half, and then you got McInnes, Tolman for Peter. That's on a bad pack right there that the Sharks have got assembled, and I got to give this to them 7-12. I think, despite not having a good record at Brookvale, or Fort Hines Park as its commercial name is known, Manly are done. I think they are cooked beyond all belief, especially after last weekend.
Yeah, Manly gone and dusted for. I'm going to say the Sharks will win this one. Will win this one big time by 28 points. I don't see Manly going very well in this match indeed.
Now moving on, we've got the Sydney Roosters up against the West Tigers in the final game at the Sydney Cricket Ground. A couple of changes for Brett Kamali's side. Ken Mamalo is back from a knee injury, so Stafford Toa is back in the centres with James Roberts dropping out. Surprise, surprise. Alex Seyfarth is on the bench with Tyrone Peachy getting the chop, and Stefano Utoikamanu and Luke Brooks are at least another week away.
As for the home side, and like you said the last time at the Sydney Cricket Ground, Lindsay Collins and Takihaho are still sideline. So they'll roll out with the same 17. Oliver Gilder has been named amongst the reserves after scoring 5 tries for North Sydney New South Wales Cup last week.
He's not had the best year, Oliver Gilder. I will say that. I
Well,
mean,
he's even been on loan.
because one, he signed with the West Tigers.
Yeah.
That's probably the first red
Although
light.
Jackson Hastings did as well, and he's having a better season.
Yeah, I'll give you that. They both signed from the Wigan Warriors to come out at the same time. But I mean, Gilder, it's this idea. I mean, you got to think of it this way: Hastings was started at lock, then he was suspended for that spear tackle. Luke Brooks did not give him any clean ball whatsoever. I thought he turned a corner when he played that game against Manly, and then, of course, injury hampered him, so he was stuck back to Western Suburbs when he came back. Now he's at North. He scores 5 tries. He's actually been playing all back 5'8", during his time with West and with North, I'd imagine, in the centres.
Yeah. But yeah, but Oliver Gilder, he's going back to the West Tigers next year. He's only on a loan deal.
It's only on a loan the Roosters are signing for the rest of the year before he goes back. Whether or not he can break back into the Tigers side under Tim Sheens, I think.
Well, maybe
Because he's still hopeful of playing in the World Cup this year, but I don't think his form, whether it's at the level for Western Suburbs or for the Tigers, I just think it's a bit hard at the moment.
I reckon if he goes back when he goes back to Tigers underneath Tim Sheens might have a bit different attack plan than what Kamali has, and he might get him more ball or something. He might use him differently, so that we'd have to wait and see there.
But other than that, I just think it's the Roosters 13+. I think they're timing this run very well, and I think the Tigers are going to get steamrolled here in the final game at the Cricket Ground before the Roosters make their move back home to Allianz Stadium for the first time in 4 years.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Roosters win this win this one by 36 points.
It's just too easy to say.
Yeah, and they're going to send this cricket ground out on the high.
Yeah. Now for the first of the Sunday games. Aimed from the gong, it is the St. George Illawarra Dragons up against the Gold Coast Titans. Speaking of the Titans.
Yeah. For the Titans, Tino Fa'asuamaleaui is back due to his partner giving birth to their second child. So Jared Wiles goes to the reserves. Aaron Clark remains on hooker. Replacement duties following Aaron Booth's season-ending injury. Tanner Boyd and AJ Brimson will still be in the halves and otherwise unchanged.
As for Anthony Griffin, he is stuck with the same 17 that lost to the Canberra Raiders 24-22, with Jaden Sullivan listed in the reserves as he continues to return from a shoulder injury. Let's talk about the return of the short whistle.
No, let's not.
No, let's talk about it.
You can. Roles reversed from round 16 at Wollongong. That's all I'm going to say.
But the short whistle, not even the chance to appeal for a penalty after Matt Vianney was dragged to ground and probably held for as long as Ricky Stewart was sidelined. I'm from any official Raiders duties.
But the referee said to get off him and get up. But then he called freaking full time anyway. And it wasn't Ashley Klein. Which is a bloody surprise. So whoever that referee is, I don't like them either, Neil.
So what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? That it wasn't Ashley Klein that cost the Dragons a game.
I'm still going to not like Ashley Klein. But now this
as your favourite referee.
Yeah. But nah. I don't know who it was, but... But hey, the Dragons had to come back from behind, which is going to be hard.
Your referee for that game was Adam G, and your senior review official in the bunker was Chris Butler. So you hate Adam G now.
Well, that's only one performance. I generally did like him.
That's only one performance. Says the man who loves Ash Klein for a living.
I hate Ash Klein. I hate him with a passion. In the bunker, not so bad. It's just the on-field, I just hate him. I don't know why. But anyway. No, but look, coming back from behind, it was going to be hard for the Dragons to win that one, but that Zach Lomax missed conversion cost the Dragons a potential win.
You were hoping the Canberra Faders were back in season.
Yeah,
but seriously, you were. You would have been hoping that the Canberra Faders, as we know, the Raiders do tend to choke when eating deep into the second half.
Yeah.
But it just didn't work out for them. Not one bit.
No, it didn't. But it's now officially the Dragons season done.
And whoever assistant coach is still remaining or is yet to sign, their season's probably done as well.
Well, I think our assistant coaches are gone.
Yep,
but
Peter Chantel and Matt Elliott, yep, they're out. How is Anthony Griffin not gone yet? That's what I want to know.
I honestly don't know. But there are talks about Trent Barrett being an assistant coach next year.
Yeah, we know how that's going to go.
Oh? Slap to the face, slap to that face.
No, that's Nathan Brown you're thinking of.
Well, you know, but Trent Barrett will now do it instead of...
Barrett pulling a brownie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Nah.
But the charge down from Ryan Sutton, that was a turning point.
Oh, yeah, it certainly did. It was a pretty good charge down. He scored a try for, which is unbelievable. And credit to him, though.
But I tell you what, Xavier Savage had another day out to remember. And but 159 running meters, 2 try assists, 2 tackle breaks, and a single offload. But your goal line defense was weak.
I have to say, for the Dragons, Ben Hunt, yet again...
40-20 and a 20-40.
Yeah, 40-20, 20-40. What else did he do? He set up tries, I believe.
Talatala Moan with a hat-trick.
Yeah. It basically... Ben Hunt did everything but convert goals. Yet again.
You would have thought if the game was on the line, he would have handled this. It's not like Mo One run the show.
Well, Mo, he had an absolute crack of the game. What was that, a hat trick? He's supposed to have a hat trick in his young career, but... Yeah, look, we tried, but failed. And that's our season gone.
And after the Titans' demolition job on the Sea Eagles... I'm actually leaning towards the Titans on this one. If they can get Fafita to play the same way he did against Manly, the Dragons are going to be in for a rough afternoon.
Sure. Well, based on recent years, the Dragons Titans games seem to be quite competitive. Yes, the Titans don't always end up winning, but they do tend to sometimes lead and then they fall off. Over the last couple of years, I've noticed that. But who knows, the Titans might actually cause an upset. But I don't think so. I'm going to stick with the boys in Red V to win this one by 14 points.
Well, leaving the men aside, we have the St. George Illawarra Dragons up against the Gold Coast Titans in the Women's Premiership as well. To start off again, round one, jumping back. We'll do this by home sides. If they're the home side, we cover their women's side if they have one.
Yeah.
So, with the Gold Coast Titans coming into their first or second season following their first ever finals appearance, RP Nichols starts at fullback with Karina Brown and Maddie Bartlett signing from the Dragons on the wings. Ivania Polite and Jasmine Peters in the centres with Ora Brayley Narty starting at 5'8" with Lauren Brown at halfback. The forward pack reads Georgia Hale locking down the scrum and with Zara Carnfield and Tasman Gray in the back row. And up front, Shannon Marto, Brittany Brayley Narty and Steph Hancock in the front row. And off the bench, Rona Peters, it is Jessica Elliston, Tiana Rothstrand-Smith and Aleka Clark make up the interchange. And their coach, Karen Murphy.
As for the runners-up for the Premiership race last year, Emma Tanagano is back at fullback with the winners being Tegan Berry and Andy Robinson, with the centres being Keely Brown and Paige McGregor, Haas, Talia Filimayono and Rachel Pearson. At lock, Holly Wheeler with the second row being Kezzy Abson, Shaylee Bent, with up front being Elsie Albert, Keely Davies and Tegan Dimmick, with the bench being Quincy Dodd, Tally Holmes, Mona Lisa Soliola, and Tara McGrath West, coached by Jamie Soward.
He was probably lucky he wasn't sacked by Griffin as well.
Hey, that's a bit different. I don't think Griffin has any control over the women's.
Well, he has full support of the board if that's the case.
Yeah.
Well, this is interesting here. Of course, the Titans decided to have a crack at the Dragons. Of course, they also had a crack at the Broncos as well. Rona Peters and Roxy Murdoch joining in for the 2022 B campaign, although they called last year. Last year. They happened in the same year, damn it. But, but Maddie Bartlett, I think, is a very astute signing for the flanks. Roxy Murdoch was probably a very useful bench forward for Brisbane. Of course, Destiny Brill is a bit of a loss right there because she was sort of a rising star on debut that year.
She certainly was, but hey, you can't keep them all.
Oh, no, of course not. Salary cap's now coming up.
Yes. But yeah, you can't keep them all. That's like the Dragons losing Maddie Bartlett. Look, like I said, you can't keep them all though. But they might have better opportunities at another club. You just never know.
To develop their careers, I definitely say that is the case right there. These were classic games for the NRLW earlier in the year. The Dragons-Titans games were sort of like the big key event, and because they were the closest games you could play.
Like the men's. They're close games.
That semi-final was absolutely nuts.
Bloody oath it was. It had me bloody nervous.
It was absolutely mental watching that semi-final at Leichhardt Oval to see who would get into the grand final first. The Dragons for their second or the Titans in their first season.
Disappointing about the Titans didn't get it because that would have been absolute good on them for their first season, but I'm happy that the Dragons got there. But then sad because they lost.
To the Roosters.
Yes.
Look, I think combinations play a big part of this, and I think there'll be an attempt to square up the Titans throwing up, but I think if... I'm leaning towards the Dragons here, just for a first-up confidence win at home. I think they win this 1-6, I think. And Kezzy Apps moving back to an edge could cause a bit of damage, but I think Tonaga Arto in and around the ruck will be looking to cause some havoc.
Well, I think looking at the team list, we're pretty much the same as last season. There are obviously a few changes there, but we're pretty much got the same squad as last season, so that should definitely help us in this match. So I would say
simply a handful of debutants coming up. Of course, Jamie Chapman joining the Brisbane Broncos and Cody House entering retirement.
yeah. But I think the Dragons can win this one by 8 points.
So it's both agreeing men and women, and for you, in your case, Ace get up for the Dragons, whereas I'm favouring the Dragons' women's side over the men's. Yeah. And finally, in the men's, speaking of that, at the Newcastle Knights at home to the Canberra Raiders.
Now for Ricky Stewart's game back, he has named Joseph Tarpany is back in the front row. So Emro Gula goes to the bench. Ryan Sutton drops to the reserves. Nick Kotrick is back from suspension, which makes Albert Hopewell 8th man.
Well, the Newcastle Knights, what a week it has been for them in the press. Of course, on top of Caleb Ponga and Kurt Meh, and being drug tested in the same cubicle, probably.
Probably.
It probably did happen. Bradman Best and Anari Tuwala have also been stood down for disciplinary reasons, but apparently missing the bus up at Brisbane.
Yep.
Not saying anything, not suggesting anything after Ponga and Man.
But they do have a time frame, and they would have known that, so yeah, that's fair.
So Edric Lee is back on the wing, with Christian and Mapapalangi taking best spot in the centres. Jacob Saifiti has been named to start at lock 4. Forward with David Clemmer back in the front row, and Matt Croker going to the bench. Suaso Su pushed to 18th man.
I think we know where this one's going.
It is just the Knights copping one bad headline after another. It's just not what they can afford. Canberra, meanwhile, they are still a mathematical chance of making the top 8, and probably the only club at this stage in the men's season to do so.
You pretty much read my mind. Like, out of that lockjam that we had of the Raiders, Roosters, well, I did say the Roosters at the time, but the Raiders, Seagulls and Dragons, out of those 3, the Raiders are now, well, Dragons are gone. Manly will be gone after this weekend. So Raiders are realistically the only other team.
Canberra's the only one, yeah. And I think, unfortunately, Parramatta's now in the danger zone. Especially with the Roosters and the Rabbitohs.
On the climb.
Exactly. If the Eels can get the win against the Dogs, they can stay off the Raiders and try and lock them out.
But then Brisbane are also lingering down there as well.
That's the thing as well.
So now's a logjam of now Brisbane, Parramatta, Canberra.
Yeah, exactly the point. And I think that's sort of like, it's now at the top 9 that nine teams in the league that everyone's looking at whether the Raiders can make the leap into the 8 at the expense of, say, a Brisbane or a Parramatta.
Yeah, who knows? I don't think Canberra...
This is just going to be a week-by-week prospect, what we're looking at right here.
Oh, most definitely.
But in this game, I think with all the headlines the Knights have had, all the issues that have just arisen up, the fact that their season has been down the toilet, so to speak. Hey, the 9 newspapers came up with that headline. I just read it.
I know. But
look, the Raiders are timing it, and I think Fogarty will control this game aim to no end, and I think the Raiders walk away here 7 points to 12 winners.
7 to 12, okay.
Yeah, I think the Raiders get up.
But in a small margin, that's interesting. That's what I'm surprised about. Look, I'm going to say Canberra by 26 points. Newcastle shot a bit. Canberra are starting to hit their strides at the right time of year.
And finally, the final fixture we're covering here. I know this might have dragged out for a little bit too long, but we have the Knights and Broncos women's sides to follow on on the Knights and Raiders at 6:10 on 9Gem.
So for the Brisbane Broncos, we have got Jamie Chapman at fullback with Julia Robinson and Emily Bass as the winners, Amy Turner and Shanae
Chasolka.
Thank you. In the centres with Taryn Aitken and Ali Bergenshaw in the halves, with the back line being up lock Talisha Harden in second row, Sarah
Sotia, I'd probably think.
Thank you. And Amber Hall, with the forwards being Sophie Hollyman, Nita Maynard and Chelsea
Lana Ducey.
Thank you, Lana Ducey. With the bench being Jada Ferguson, Caitlin Phillips, Crystal
Tamarua.
Thank you, and Jasmine Fogavini.
Probably Fogavini's probably a bit close, but you
Fogavini,
tried.
sorry.
And of course, the Broncos once again being led, I believe, once I bring it up, Kelvin Wright.
There we go.
Right. As for the Newcastle Knights, well, what a recruitment drive they have engaged on for their second NRLW season in 2022. Tamika Upton and starting at fullback with Kiana Takarangi and Bobby Law, or the wingers. In the centres, it's Shanice. Oh no, sorry.
I was going to say.
Sorry, I'll start that one again. And Kiana Takarangi and Autumn Rain Stevens Daly on the flank. Thanks. In the centres, it's Shanice Parker and Bobby Law in the centres, not on the flank. In the halves, it's Kira Dibb and Jessie Southwell. In the forwards, it's Hannah Southwell at lock forward, with Romy Teitzel moving to an edge and Yasmin Clydesdale in the second row. Up front, Caitlin Johnston, Olivia Higgins, and probably the biggest signing of them all, none bigger, Millie Boyle in the front row. And off the bench, Emma Manzelman and Taylor Predeben, Kyra Simon, and Simone Kapani. And they are coached by Ronnie Griffiths.
Yes.
Well,
Biggest
the
sign.
Newcastle
I have
Knights.
to say the biggest two signings, Tamika Upton and Millie Boyle. But Millie Boyle over
And
Tamika
then
Upton.
the Roosters forwards as well. Olivia Higgins and I believe also Hannah Southwell. But really, the raid on the Broncos and the Roosters, this could be interesting to see how this pays its dividends for Newcastle now that they've literally got the best front rower in the women's game in this country.
Yeah, well, I think part of the reason why she came to Newcastle too was because Adam Elliott, being her partner, had come up to Newcastle next
Also
year.
signed with the Knights men's side for next year.
Yeah, so that probably had a bit of a part to it as well. But yeah, still an absolute massive sign. And named co-captain alongside, I think, Hannah Southwell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was one of the Southwells, but yeah.
Romy Teitzel moving to an edge. She was playing fullback only earlier this year, so she must have put on some fair amount of size if she's out on the edge.
Or she might have just been a stand-in fullback until they had more of a decent fullback come into the side.
Well,
possibly.
no more decent than Tamika Upton. I mean,
Oh yeah. But yeah, we don't know the full story of why, but that's what I think. She could easily be preferred on the edge, but then just had to fill in at fullback or vice versa.
well, if we had our chances and tried to set up an interview, maybe we could pose that question to her.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, it's going to be interesting because I think the forward packs are now evened up. If Boyle was still playing for the Broncos, I'd say Broncos win instantly. But the Knights,
Broncos are going to go hard at Millie Boyle and Tamika Upton, surely, going up against the old club mates. Or teammates.
I have no doubt they'll try. But it could just depend on... I just think it comes back to also combinations, but the halves, especially Ali Brigginshaw. I just think... You look at the best halfback in this country. I mean, you got Matty Studden, Racine McGregor's won a premiership for the Roosters, Zara Tamara, who got the Roosters really on that, what's become practically folklore at this point. I think we're in for, this will be the best of the best as of the 3 games over the weekend, but I think the Broncos still get a win here, 1-6.
I'm actually going to say Newcastle. They were close in the triple header last year to open up the season in Newcastle, and they were competitive but couldn't quite get the win. And yes, they got the wooden spoon and no wins, but some games are more competitive than others. And I think especially like some Millie Boyle in the middle, that would definitely help them. So I'm going to say Newcastle did win this one by 4 points.
Well, you're being bold on this one, but we'll see how exactly that pans out. But that is full time from us here, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back tomorrow with your Betfred Super League debrief, of course. Also, Warrington, the escape artists. Wakefield, the upset win. And it's only counting down for Toulouse Olympique at this point, unfortunately. But if you like this debrief, this part of the podcast for this week, make sure you leave it a like, hit that subscribe button, and click the bell for notifications so you never miss a week of rugby league action. Don't forget to give us a follow on our social media. We'll try and be more engaging on there rather than just post video uploads. On Facebook and on Instagram, it is at Sideline Chat, and on Twitter, it is at Sideline Chat RL, which is also one of our hashtags alongside Side Chat YT. Hope to see you then.